Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of World Panorama. Here we are getting you your weekly dose of major international news with a perspective. I am Sana Khan. Before we get to detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. Chaotic scenes continue on the streets of Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood rejects transition plan. World Panorama takes a look at the tumultuous transition. After 2 days of extensive debate, Ireland votes to allow limited abortion rights for the very first time. China defends its latest Ladakh incursion after reports emerged that Chinese troops vandalize Indian posts in Chumar sector. And a look at what's changed in the lives of this year's Wimbledon champions Marion Bartoli and Andy Murray. Straight to the story in focus this week. Uncertainty ruled in Egypt as the Muslim holy month of Ramzan began, and the military said it would address the issues of the past week's deadly violence. Egypt's military-backed interim president has issued a 7-month timetable for the country's transition after the ouster of President Mohamed Morsi, starting with amending the constitution and leading to elections for a new parliament and president by the first months of next year. The schedule aims to swiftly put in place a new democratically formed government, even as the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamists continue protests demanding the reinstatement of Morsi, Egypt's first freely elected president, who was removed on 3rd June by the military after massive street protests against him. The military faces calls from the US and Western allies in particular to show that civilians are in charge and Egypt is on a path toward a democratically based leadership. The nascent government will soon face demands that it tackle economic woes that mounted under Morsi, including fuel shortages, electricity cutoffs and inflation. This week, we look beyond the crisis itself, the possibility of a new Egypt in the next 200 days or so if things go according to this plan. Or maybe not. Joining me to discuss this is Dr. Meena Singh Roy. She's Research Fellow and Head of West Asia Center at the IDSA. Welcome to the show, ma'am. But before we discuss that, here's a report that I've compiled for you.
Mohamed Morsi may have been ousted, but his supporters won't give up yet. The thousands across the country still fighting for Morsi's legitimacy against military's crackdown on Muslim Brotherhood leaders. The violence threatens to stall Egypt's transition plans. All this as Egypt's interim president named liberal economist and former finance minister Hazem al-Biblawi as prime minister, and a day later named Hisham Barakat as the new prosecutor general, completing a contentious legal process that removed the man appointed by deposed President Mohamed Morsi.
As soon as we have an elected House of Representatives, when in the first session, and maximum in 1 week, the president should call for the early presidential elections. So this is the most important development. We have a specific time frame, and the main objective is to have an agreed upon and amended constitution, an elected House of Representatives, and of course a presidential election.
As Egypt prepares for transition, US and Germany urge the nation to return to a path of democratic transition as quickly as possible.
We've, of course, seen the announcement coming out of Egypt. As we have conveyed to all of Egypt's leaders, we want to see an inclusive government that addresses Egypt's many political, economic, and social challenges and builds as well as building a greater consensus. This is part of the transition.
Die gegeben wurde am 9. Juli. Die Verfassungserklärung setzt auch die nächsten Wegmarken, aber es ist wichtig, dass alle politischen Akteure in diesen Prozess mit einbezogen werden. Das heißt, dass es ein inklusiver Prozess ist, der alle relevanten politischen Kräfte umfasst. Nur so wird auch ein wirklich demokratischer Prozess in Ägypten stattfinden können, nach unserer Überzeugung.
US aid to Egypt was formally put under review on Thursday in the wake of last week's military-backed power shift as Arab nations rushed to pledge $12 billion to the country's new government. It marks a policy shift by the Obama administration. However, the slated US delivery of 4 F-16 fighter jets to Egypt in the coming weeks was still scheduled as planned, senior US officials said.
Well, we are evaluating how the authorities are responding to and handling the current situation. We will take our time and the time necessary to make the determinations regarding what happened, last week and the change in leadership, the removal of President Morsi from power.
The question is how long the country has before Egyptians take to the streets en masse, rejecting the military leadership, like what happened after Mubarak was ousted in 2011. If the military fails to draw a consensus and move the transition swiftly, it could face a revolt. If recent history repeats itself, the military will crush dissent with brute force, and you have the whole fiasco all over again.
All right, Dr. Roy, let me start by asking you, Adly Mansour has named the new prime minister, a new prosecutor has been named, the Gulf nations have poured in a bit of aid for Egypt. All this seems to be an effort to, towards a smooth transition for Egypt. Your thoughts, is the transition, does it seem as smooth, right now, or do you see a tumultuous transition?
Well, I guess it all depends as to how the transition is done, in the coming months. At the moment, what we can see is that the road is not very smooth, It's bumpy because of the problems within and without. There are security concerns, there are economic issues, unemployment, inflation rates. Even if we look at the foreign, direct investments, the foreign reserves, I think each of these indicators suggest that this particular process is not going to be as easy as people might think it would be.
Yeah.
And I think it's more important as the plan which has been already laid out, saying that they would be conducting elections, the parliamentary elections in February 2014, followed by, amending a constitution with a referendum, that will suggest, followed by the elections of the president. But the period, which would follow from,
these 7 months.
7 to 8 months that people are looking at, how, the military, the interim government is going to really address the issues which concern people. Let's say that today what we see is the military coup with a civilian face, where people are not yet very happy, nor are they contented. And I think, the expectation was too much, even during the last 1 year, given the kind of problems. And the security concerns, let's not ignore them as well. There is a polarization if you see the Egyptian, politics today. So how these challenges are going to be, addressed in a fashion that they can take all the factions together, and there is a consensus and agreement among the opposition, the pro-Morsi and the anti-Morsi
so it is a rough
factions.
road.
So it's a bumpy road, I would say.
All right.
It would be. It would not. There are no easy solutions to the problem that you see
according
unfolding.
to this new transition plan, Adly Mansour seems to, he's offered cabinet berths to Muslim Brotherhood, but they have clearly rejected that, saying that we will not accept any cabinet berths until you get our president back. So clearly, Muslim Brotherhood is not on board, and there are also reports that the organization may be disbanded. There's certain investigation that's been carried out. Reports say that if they'd been storing, arms in their headquarters, and the group would be disbanded and go back to where it really was earlier on. Your thoughts on the Muslim Brotherhood and the way things are proceeding?
Well, you see, we have to accept the fact that Muslim Brotherhood was duly democratically elected government, and which was overthrown by military coup. Problems could have been many, but this is what the fact remains. And the Islamist, the extremist forces, within and without, this is definitely not a very good signal which is being sent to people. This may, sort of create some kind of a vibrations, in a sense that people may think that, look, now Al-Qaeda has not even, doesn't agree with the democratic process, particularly the Western democratic process and the way it has democracy. They reject democracy.
Right.
So how these forces, I'm not saying, the liberal forces, but the forces which are, driven by other, sort of reasons and ideological, inclinations, this definitely, and you have Libya, you have arms and ammunitions, you have the Syrian crisis. Sinai, of course, is another area where we've been noticing the flow of weapons and all there. Now, how these elements are going to be controlled, or what is going to be the impact, whether Muslim Brotherhood is able to put, these people together, and, how the situation would unfold. These things are uncontrollable today. Yeah. So we cannot just say that, the dangers of, extremist elements that might, become a part and parcel of the process that you might see unfolding in the years to come. So I think it's too early to just say that things would go smooth and all. Yes, at the same time, one should also, look as to how Egypt has dealt with the crisis situation in past, Yeah. There is a history where they have been able to manage those crisis situations. When President was killed in 81, thereafter, the Islamic insurgents, when 700 people died in 90s, and later on, when tourists were killed. So there have been situations, and of course, last year, 1 year, and before that, so people have had that experience. But I think the most important aspect is the level of frustration within the people of Egypt who
Having said that, you also mentioned earlier about the polarization. There is a deep divide that is, increasingly coming to fore in Egypt. What about that? How is that, because it might really raise the fears of rising violence in the days to come. Right now, we are seeing less of protests, perhaps because of the holy month that's set in right now. But things might not be as calm as they are right now. Over the past few days, we've seen a bit
Well, absolutely. To bring in the pro-Morsi forces, how you could really address the issues which have been raised by the democratically elected, Muslim Brotherhood. Until unless you really ban them, you suppress them, which will not deliver the desired results, and you would definitely see much more violence. So how, you can really bring them into the fold of the process which you are planning, you have planned. I think those So
the big challenge is to get all these divided parties on board and find a solution. That perhaps is the biggest challenge right now. And we'll have to really wait and watch to see how these 7 months go ahead and how the transition plan suggested by Adly Mansour shapes up. On that note, Dr. Roy, thanks so much for joining me on World Panorama. Hope to have you soon again on the show. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us. We're taking a very quick break right now, but on the other side, we'll get you more details on this report from Ireland, where abortion under certain conditions has been legalized. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. You're watching World Panorama. Lawmakers in the Republic of Ireland voted to legalize abortion under certain conditions for the first time. The move needs upper house endorsement as well. The vote follows the case of an Indian woman who died in a hospital after she was refused an abortion. The debate revealed deep splits in the predominantly Roman Catholic country. Opponents say the bill could lead to more widespread abortions. Have a look.
Tá 127, Neil 31. The bill is passed.
Ireland's parliament voted on Friday to allow abortion under certain conditions for the first time following months of polarizing debate in the Catholic country. Prime Minister Enda Kenny provoked protests from both sides of the debate by pushing through a compromise that will allow abortion, but only when a woman's life is in danger.
It is women's lives that have been put at risk because of the legal situation in this country and because of the political cowardice of successive governments. It is women who have died, it is women who have suffered, it is women who have been forced to flee in the dead of night under a stigma of criminality.
I fully respect the rights of all Catholics. I would defend and go out of my way to defend their rights to practice their religion and to stay true to their beliefs. But people who don't want to access abortion are already looked after.
The victory is being attributed single-handedly to Ireland's Prime Minister Enda Kenny, who, despite facing the biggest in-party revolt and threats of social ostracization by the church, went ahead with the legislation. The bill allows abortions only when a pregnant woman's life is under threat due to the pregnancy or if she is suicidal. The bill was introduced after Indian dentist Savita Halappanavar died in the hospital in Galway in 2012 after being denied a termination. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In yet another case of cross-border incursion, Chinese troops infiltrated into the Indian territory in Ladakh and broke a camera set up by the Indian Army at the line of actual control. Earlier on the 19th of May, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang had come on a 3-day tour of India, while External Affairs Minister Salman Khurshid had visited China on May 10th, followed by A.K. Antony's visit. During these visits, both sides spoke about resolving all issues amicably, but the latest incident reveals otherwise. Another incursion. Chinese troops intrude into the Chumar sector in Ladakh, the same area which had sparked off tensions in April. People's Liberation Army smashed some bunkers besides cutting wires of cameras installed at the border post. The incident took place on June 17th. The incursion reported only after Defence Minister's visit to China, as the neighbours were negotiating a new border framework as a step towards resolving the territorial dispute. The camera, which was removed, was reportedly returned on 3rd July, a day ahead of Antony's arrival in Beijing.
This has happened before, so it is not new. This has happened during Defence Minister's visit, Mr. A.K. Antony's visit, just before the visit. So, which meant that the Chinese patrols are not really keen on ushering in peace and tranquility, and they want to assert their line of their version of the line of actual control, or even beyond. So that is the reason why such things are happening now. It also reflects to the tension in the bilateral political and diplomatic relations.
Hitting out at the federal government for the repeated incursions, defence experts say India is weak to retaliate.
Recent incident of a renewed intrusion into the same area shows that Chinese know that the government in Delhi is too weak, too paralyzed to even react to it. It will do nothing.
China, meanwhile, has virtually defended the latest incursion. The Chinese contention is that some of the build-ups along the line of actual control are in violation of protocols governing borders that haven't been mutually delineated. India is weighing a proposal to patrol deeper into the disputed territory beyond the limits observed before the April standoff. Currently, surveillance is restricted to a self-imposed patrolling limit ranging 2 to 20 kilometers inside New Delhi's perception of the LAC. And a quick look at Globe Watch now, other international news compiled for you in a wrap.
Boston Marathon bomb suspect Johar Tsarnaev has pleaded not guilty to all charges in his first court appearance as blast victims looked on. Tsarnaev faces 30 counts of using a weapon of mass destruction in the 2/15 April blast that killed 3, including an 8-year-old boy. He appeared in shackles in an orange prison suit and replied not guilty as the charges were read to the court. Prosecutors could press for the death penalty for 17 counts. South Korean businessmen returned after inspecting facilities at Kaesong Industrial Park and said they were in good condition. The visit to the industrial park was made after two Koreas agreed to allow South Korean businessmen to conduct inspections of the facilities and let South Korean businessmen retrieve finished goods and raw materials. It was the first visit by businessmen to Kaesong since North Korea closed the complex of factories in April, withdrawing all of its 53,000 workers and banned South Korean firms from crossing the border. In a sweeping rejection of Apple Inc.'s strategy for selling electronic books on the internet, a federal judge ruled that the company conspired with 5 major publishers to raise e-book prices. The court's decision could expose Apple to substantial damages. Apple was accused of conspiring to undercut Amazon.com Inc.'s e-book dominance, causing some e-book prices to rise to $12.99 or $14.99 from the $9.99 that the online retailer charged. Amazon once had a 90% market share. A landslide triggered by heavy rainfall has left at least 18 people dead in southwest China's Sichuan province. State television CCTV showed footage of excavators clearing mud that was brought by gushing flood water and rescuers searching for survivors. Torrential rains have been battering most parts of Sichuan since July 8th, disrupting traffic and forcing tens of thousands to flee their homes. British television station Channel 4 became the first publicly funded broadcaster in the UK to air the Muslim call to prayer every morning during Ramadan. Channel 4 announced it would be the first mainstream national broadcaster to air the call, issuing it at 3 a.m. daily from July 10th for the entire Muslim month of fasting. The initiative has stirred controversy in the UK, where Muslims make up just under 5% of the population. Throughout the world, Muslims attended local mosques after the first iftar dinner of the fasting month of Ramadan, which began before sunrise on July 10th. Ramadan is the holy month for the world's more than 1 billion Muslims, during which observant believers fast from dawn to dusk. The holy month ends with the holiday of Eid al-Fitr.
A glance at all the sports news now that you might have missed throughout this week. Here's all the sports action. Andy Murray is getting quite a taste for Grand Slam titles and believes crushing Novak Djokovic to end Britain's interminable wait for a men's champion at Wimbledon will be a springboard to take his career to the next level. The 26-year-old became a national hero when a 6-4, 7-5, 6-4 victory on a baking centre court meant the nation could finally stop talking about Fred Perry, who won his third Wimbledon title in 1936. Murray's stunning performance was hailed by everyone from politicians, movie stars and fellow sportsmen, as well as the millions who watched his landmark victory. Wimbledon ladies singles champion Marion Bartoli was still reveling in her victory, saying winning the title was something she'd always dreamt of. A goal that was 22 years in the making came true for Bartoli last Saturday following a surreal 2 weeks where those who were favoured for the Wimbledon crown crashed out early, leaving a final showdown between two players ranked outside the world's top 14. Swede Jonas Blix took advantage of a last-day collapse by overnight leader Johnson Wagner to win his second PGA Tour title by 2 shots at the Greenbrier Classic in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. The 29-year-old Swede held his nerve over a pressure-packed closing stretch, mixing 4 birdies with 2 bogeys over the last 10 holes to post a 13-under total of 267. World champion Sebastian Vettel was pushed all the way but finally tasted Formula One victory on home soil in a German Grand Prix that sent him 34 points clear of Ferrari's Fernando Alonso. The triple champion had never won in Germany, but days after his 26th birthday and a week after mechanical failure forced an agonizing retirement at Silverstone, ripped up the statistics to the delight of thousands of flag-waving fans. Time now for all the very latest news from the world of movies and lifestyle. Here's our entertainment wrap.
One of the most hotly anticipated births of the year, the arrival of the first baby of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, will provide good news for royal celebrations. The new third in line to the throne is expected to be born sometime around mid-July at St. Mary's Hospital in central London, the same place where both William and his younger brother Harry were born. Kate's pregnancy has been one of the most talked about topics over the last months, and not just in the press. The Black Keys and Wiz Khalifa are some of the stars to take stage for the annual music festival in Quebec, which is billed as Canada's largest outdoor musical event. The summer festival has been going for more than 40 years. The 46th edition kicked off July 4th, and by the time Steve Wonder closes the festival on July 12th, and will have featured more than 1,000 acts, English and French, local and international, playing almost every genre. Rapper Jay-Z is taking promotion to the next level, selling 1 million copies of his latest album to Samsung for smartphone distribution and going on a 6-hour tweet-a-thon with fans. The American musician holds the title for most #1 albums on the Billboard 200 chart for a solo artist, and Magna Carta Holy Grail has a good shot of being his 13th record to shoot to #1. Creator Aaron Sorkin joined the cast of his acclaimed HBO drama, The Newsroom, on the red carpet in Hollywood for the series' Season 2 premiere. Sorkin, an Oscar and Emmy-winning writer, acclaimed the series was never meant to be a how-to manual or news gathering and was reluctant to weigh in on the role of media. The Newsroom Season 2 debuts on July 14th on HBO.
Well, that's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. See you next week, same time, with more international news. Till then, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. As I sign off, take a look at this deadly but fun festival of Spain, the San Fermin Bull Running Festival that was opened with the traditional firing of the Chupinazo rocket as thousands of revelers held up red scarves and cheered on. The week-long celebrations draw tourists from around the world. This is me, Sana Khan, signing off.